Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item of business is the roll call. Ms. Palacios.
Governing Board President Denise Reese.
Here.
Governing Board Clerk Dr. John Sparks.
Here.
Governing Board Member Sherry Lowell.
Here.
Governing Board Member Kevin Opalka.
Here.
Governing Board Member Nicole Warner, absent. District Administration Superintendent Dr. Manuel Valenzuela.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Scott Downs.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Brett Bonner.
Here.
Chief Financial Officer Lisette Huey.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. The next item of business is Governing Board Temporary Reorganization. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Reese. This is for the benefit of the public. This is a special thing that we do on occasion. I firmly believe that governing board service is one of the most pure examples of public service that we have in our country. It's local, it's community-based, it's also unpaid. And one of the little special things that we try and do for our board members, when an individual, he or she has a son or daughter that is preparing to graduate from one of our high schools, we allow that person, if they're not already currently serving in the role of president, to assume formally that role for a moment in time, so that he or she could have the honor of signing their child's diploma as president. So, as the case may be, Dr. John Sparks' son Hugh will be graduating with honors, I might add, at Sahuarita High School, and so we will continue this tradition this evening. Please proceed, Madam President.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. I'd like to move that we temporarily make Dr. John Sparks the president and temporarily make Denise Reese the clerk for the signing of the diploma for his son.
Second.
Okay. It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
This scares me only because it's the actual one. It just is not.
Can't
printed
put white out.
It's that one right there, right?
There's no white.
Clerk is right.
Really bad. Betsy would be very mad at me. Isn't that fun? I know, right?
I think, just as a father, I think this is a really cool tradition. That first time I saw it was Diana Killmeyer. Her son was graduating a couple cycles ago, and they did it. I thought that is just the coolest thing. I hope if I'm around still at that point in time, that I get to do that same thing. So my first will be graduating from Sahuarita this year. I'm super excited and proud of him. Of course.
Congratulations, Dr. Sparks.
He's a good kid. Sorry, young man. Yes, he is 18 now. And thank you for indulging me and allowing that to happen.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
and now the reorganization. I move to re-elect Denise Reese as the governing board president and John Sparks as the clerk.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Moving on, we have the approval of the agenda. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am, I recommend approval of the board agenda as it was revised.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approval of the minutes. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. You have several public documentations of board gatherings, specifically the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of the board from way back on March the 9th. In addition to that, the notification of the board lunch on March 28th, 2022. And finally, the notification of the board's gathering for the goal-setting study session, which I believe took place on April 4th. And I would recommend the board's approval of all of those minutes and notices at this time.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Ratification of the vouchers. Dr. Valenzuela.
I would defer to Mrs. Huey.
Thank you, Dr. V. Tonight, I'd like to recommend payroll voucher ratifications 18 through 20, new payroll 22 and 23 for a total payroll approval of $10,987,593.24. Additionally, I recommend expense vouchers 1069 and 1069 through 1076, and new expense vouchers 1083 through 1086 for a new expense approval of $9,444,280.58, and a grand total ratification and new vouchers of $20,431,873.82.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So.
Second.
So moved.
There we go.
It's been properly moved and seconded to accept the vouchers. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The superintendent reports. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Just a few items to share, even though, as we all know, there are a multitude of amazing, outstanding activities, fine arts, athletics, in many different regards. And I, of course, encourage everybody to get out and see these kind of culmination, capstone activities. Our students are amazing. We always do present enrollment reports. As you can see, it's kind of like a mix of red and green. You know, I've never really understood, although I've noticed a trend in the many years of doing this, and those that have been on the board probably would echo this, that the end of the year sometimes does show a little bit mild, modest decline. I also would note that although 16 students is less than a quarter, about a quarter of a percent, we also haven't had a meeting for a month, so it's kind of the accumulation of an entire month. But still, the big thing is that when you look at where we were a year ago, we are 509 students above, and again, those lines, the slope of those lines generally seem to be holding flat or steady, which is encouraging as we plan budgetarily and programmatically for the next year. I think we have a photograph of Mr. Downs. You know, one of our strategic directions is community outreach and partnerships.
That's a great picture.
And Mr. Downs was invited on a Goodwill Ambassador flight with the members of the Arizona Army National Guard. So he flew in a helicopter. I don't know if that smile is joy or a sign of his nervousness, but we were glad he came back safe and sound, thank God. You know, finally, I just got to say, in this profession that we love, one of the most affirming things you get sometimes is just simple comments from parents. And recently, we got a message from a mom And her son's a 21-year-old junior, I think, at the Eller College. His name is Roberto Ramirez. And he participated in the CTE classes at Sahuarita High School, class of 19. One was, he participated in multiple programs, kind of around multimedia. And the mom just went on about how impactful Mr. Derek Marshall was, and Miss Rebecca Warren, who teaches photo, again in the media area. So this young man's studying business, but he's already doing pretty well. He actually now does work designing cars for NASCAR, for the Xfinity circuit. And he did like this video for some kind of a project at Eller, and it's like 3 or 4 minutes. I think it's a worthy view. Could you please go ahead and run that?
That's great.
Hi, my name is Roberto Ramirez, and I'm a marketing student at the Eller College of Management at the University of Arizona. For the past 2.5 years, I've also been working as a freelance graphic designer within the NASCAR industry. In this video, I'm going to show you a little bit about my background and how I see myself as a professional today. I was born in Tucson, and I've lived in southern Arizona for my whole life. In my early years, I didn't know much being a toddler and all, but one thing that I did know was that everything was all about the Arizona Wildcats. My whole family adored the U of A. From the first time I walked into my kindergarten classroom, my mind was already set on where I wanted to go to college. Some of my earliest memories revolve around playing with toy cars. My dad has always been in the cars, and that's something that I picked up from him early on. As a kid, I fell in love with NASCAR because I loved seeing all the different designs and colors on each car. This led to me really wanting to become a race car driver when I grew up. But as the years went by and without any action taken towards that dream, I realized it was probably never going to happen. However, I still wanted to be a part of racing in some form or fashion. Fast forwarding a bit to high school, I developed a passion for film and TV, and I was able to strengthen my editing and graphic design abilities during this time. Mostly thanks to my teachers Miss Warren and Mr. Marshall, who helped me get experience working with local organizations on design projects. In my free time, I started doing concept designs for NASCAR race cars, and I'd post them online. Honestly, I never really thought it would go anywhere. But shortly after graduation, a friend of mine who worked for a race team asked me if I wanted to design a real race car, and the rest was history. In September 2019, my first NASCAR paint scheme hit the track with Stuart Haas Racing and driver Cole Custer in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Since then, I've had 18 of my designs on NASCAR race cars. I've gone to work with marketing managers from companies such as Smithfield, Haas Automation, Ford, JBL Audio, and many others. I've even gotten to see 2 of them win races on my own TV screen, which, as you can imagine, is a very rewarding feeling. When I first got accepted to the University of Arizona, I wasn't really sure what major I wanted to pursue yet. But my experiences working with companies in the NASCAR world led me to pursue a degree in marketing, and I haven't looked back. I'm hoping to use the knowledge that I gain here at Eller to be the best marketer I can possibly be, and it's something that can help me in my current role as a graphic designer as well. In a sport like NASCAR that is so reliant on corporate funding, I work with marketing professionals quite a bit. And having a degree in marketing is something that can be a tremendous asset to me, just getting on the same page with the people that I work with. I look forward to taking everything that I've learned at Eller and using it to strengthen my abilities both as a graphic designer and as a professional. Marketing goes hand in hand with what I do, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of my studies pay off in the future.
And participating in all of our April and May events.
Thank you. Dr. Sparks.
This is a busy time of year, and I was blessed to be present at the some of both of the Winter Guard and Winter Indoor Drum competition finals for the state. The Winter Guard at Walden took first in their division in the state, doing very well, moved up a division and did very, very well. And Sahuarita took fifth in theirs, and I saw part of that at the beginning of the day. But then I moved over to the Indoor Drum location and watched both my senior and sophomore take first in their division in the state for Sahuarita Indoor Drum. Walden Grove moved up a division this year, and I took fourth in that division, doing very, very well also. And I just think it was, one of those fun things. That program's exactly 4 years old. He was on the founding team, and they took state that year in their division, took first. They took first his senior year, kind of a cool way to end the year. But I think, all of the things that go on in our district, whether it be sports or music, all the extracurricular activities we do, I think, I'm just grateful that we live in a community that supports the district well, so that we can offer that really broad, expanded offering of not only educational material and classes. I mean, how many AP classes do we have at each high school? 23?
Over 30.
Over 30 total. But also the extracurricular, like indoor drum, which I know the indoor drum and Winter Guard are both growing and continue to do that. So I'm not only proud to have, but also proud of the district and the success both of those programs are having. So it's really kind of fun. That's a intense endeavor, indoor drum. It's like marching on overdrive. It's like marching band on overdrive. So anyway, that's it. I'm just grateful to be here and looking forward to the end of the year as we kind of finish up and wrap up all the things going on. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Alpaca.
No report this week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just, in addition to, again, congratulating everyone sort of as they hit this sort of final stretch for this school year, as they continue to work through it. And then I would also like to wish everyone a happy Easter this weekend. I hope that you enjoy the hopefully good weather. We're tired of the wind, and enjoy the weekend with friends and family. So thank you. Recognition of staff, students, community. We don't have any this evening. The open enrollment report. Dr. Gonzalez, or no, wait, sorry. Call to the public. There we go. Sorry. All right. Consideration and discussion of comments and concerns from the public. Those wishing to address the governing board on items not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time or at the board's discretion at the time the item appears on the agenda. Speakers are requested to hold their comments to 2 minutes or less. 20 minutes will be allowed for both online and in-person comments. In accordance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law, board members may not respond, comment, or ask questions of speakers regarding issues not on the agenda. Any comments not read during this agenda item will still be entered into the public record. Dr. Sparks, how many speakers do we have this evening?
We have one.
Okay, then we shall proceed with the protocols as outlined. Dr. Sparks, call our speaker, please.
Our speaker today would be Renee Kibbe, and subject is curricula, is what it states here.
Hello, Governing Board, Dr. Ree, and parents and the public. I want to come to talk to you about the curricula. I've been researching it, and even though your life is busy and it seems kind of difficult and a big task to review the curriculum, I want to encourage you to do so. If you do not have time and it's impossible, please listen to the following findings that is in the new curriculum, mostly for the Love Notes curriculum. If these are not your goals for your family, please, or the district, please let the district know that you do not want to hear or consider not allowing your child to attend. I've researched and I watched videos, and some of the videos are putting doubt in kids' minds about talking to the parents about certain issues, and encouraging the children to talk to the people in the organization mostly. And it Also has details about certain pleasures, which for the high school, and it's degrading men's performances and gives wrong expectations for females. And the success sequence highlighted in one of the tests that is going to be given is what is one of these choices that is not part of the success sequence, and that is owning a home before you have kids and being married. And I'm like, what? I've heard this before, own nothing and you'll be happy. And there's other things that are concerning, but I wanted to bring those out to you, and just please go over it with a fine-tooth comb. I didn't just skim through it. It took me like 2, 3, 4 weeks, a long time to find all this, and I'm still not finished. So please, reconsider this, those curricula, please. Thank you.
Okay. Next agenda item, new business, the 2022-23 open enrollment. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Reese. You know, open enrollment has been part of the education landscape in the state of Arizona for a long time. I was pondering that because I've been around a long time. And, you know, it's a part of our state. We have embraced it and worked to maximize the benefits of the system. First, our focus in addressing open enrollment is making sure that we're there to serve the needs of the residents who reside within the boundaries of the Sahuarita Unified School District. And secondly, based on availability of excess capacity or space, to welcome those who choose and wish to be part of our school community. I just got to say, a lot of our open enrollment students, once they're here, they're part of us. And as long as they're doing the right thing and they're in good standing, they're a part of our community. But we do move carefully because we know that we need to balance the needs of the local community and the spaces of our schools with the amount of capacity that we can generate. So I'm telling you, Mr. Downs has a tough job. He kind of leads this effort. And so this evening we have some recommendations in regards to the open enrollment capacity, but Scott can give you a little more detail about some important details. Mr. Downs?
Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. In your packet, there was the request for approval for the open enrollment positions. I want to let you know that historically, once a student becomes an open enrollment student, we kind of treat them as if they're our own. Although they do have to reapply to make sure they're in good standing. Those are usually granted first because we want to make sure the continuance of education in a student's life is adhered to, because it's important to have stability. So the numbers that you see before you are new open enrollment capacities, and I think the most important thing is, as you well know or see, that there's a lot of houses that come in, that are coming in south of Wrightson Ridge and north of Fry's, and so as space capacity, I guess, gets taken up by regular ed students, these numbers would start to dwindle. But I did contact every school, got the information for their open enrollment, categorized them by grade, and I'm asking for the approval of the open enrollment capacity. We already have open enrollment capacity. They've already started accepting or pre-approving, I guess, if you will, but with your blessing, they will become official.
And this is required by Arizona law, basically that the board designate what's called, the official term is excess capacity. And again, Scott does it very meticulously. I can vouch for that, very personally, with data, with like projections, and with consultation with all of the principals. And these are district numbers. And I would, at this time, recommend your designation of the open enrollment capacity for the 22-23 school year.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I got a quick question for you. How do the numbers for the SDPA play into this?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Did we reach out to SDPA and establish that we can only accept 1, 2, 3, whatever the numbers are, or is that kind of an extra bucket of open enrollment potentially?
SDPA is kind of unusual because it's online. We usually can
Right.
handle a little bit more capacity, especially in the 6th through 12th grade, because in K through 5, it's basically a traditional teacher set with our current numbers. But in terms of open enrollment, they don't really have an open enrollment capacity because it's kind of open air space. I think it's probably more of the capacity of the staff that we have and not physical capacity. And in speaking with Brett and Mrs. Nelson, right now we don't foresee any issues with anybody who wants to go to SDPA. And with that too, we can always ebb and flow staff as, if numbers were to really start driving towards SDPA, we can look at brick and mortar teachers and make adjustments, however you want to do that very delicately and analytically, because again, taking a teacher away from a student who they're already used to is pretty, detrimental. So, but we do have that ability to do that to deal with any issues that might come up within the capacity of SDPA.
So the numbers that we see here are more about the physical
Correct.
facilities. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a
And then
question.
one too. Go ahead, Sherry.
What about by school? So, if we approve this, like, for example, Wrights and Ridge, are they facing a different capacity than
Yeah, we
SBS,
didn't break it
SMS,
down
or-
by school, but I could tell you, like, for 42 kids in kindergarten, that's not evenly split amongst all of our kindergarten.
Right.
The numbers that we came in that we had analyzed, 3 of them might be from, and kindergarten is tough because you don't really know which kids are coming yet, but so I'll use first grade for 38. A lot of these numbers did not come from Wrights and Ridge because they are our pretty package.
That's
We
what I
are
was wondering.
projecting some growth. So we have to kind of balance that out. So, yeah, these numbers aren't split equally amongst the grades that, what they are at the schools.
So the numbers that we got from our administrators in the individual schools, that's their cap number? And
Correct.
so they all know their cap number?
Yeah.
Then just a real quick second question on that. So if a student comes in under SDPA, because we then consider them a student of our district, then if they wanted to go to brick and mortar, would that be a lateral? Or would they have to, if they went from SDPA to a brick and mortar and they were out of district, would they then have to go through open enrollment, or would we?
They would have to go through open enrollment at the brick and mortar, and that's probably a little bit of a contingency because
Correct.
Usually when Tina accepts a student in first grade, she can't say, well, all of a sudden I don't want you in second grade. So
Correct.
the tradition of always keeping an open enrollment student is more so for the brick and mortar kids.
Okay.
Because that would definitely be an open door for anybody
Yeah.
to come into our district. But that's also why we have 293 spots here,
Right.
that if people want to do that, they don't have to do that loophole. And I think most principals would look at SDPA as one of our own and know that they're receiving the same curriculum, the parents are used to our schools, and I don't see why a principal would not take one of these students in one of their
That'd be-
positions.
I know, and I sincerely appreciate us treating once somebody has been considered open enroll as one of our own, for the sake of continuity, and so that they don't have to fear that, they're going to be booted out in third grade or fourth grade. So I appreciate that. So those are my questions.
Yeah, Madam President. My understanding is that just because a student is, for example, open enrolls or attempts to open enroll at Anza Trail, if Anza Trail's met their capacity, they could be offered a spot at another site if they had space.
Yeah, there's a lot of articulation that goes between principals on open enrollment and capacity, so absolutely.
And I think that's important too to understand that open enrollment, it applies to in-district also. So if you have a student that is district or boundaried for Anza Trail but wants to go to Copperview for elementary school, for example, they have to go through the open enrollment process. Like
Correct.
It's not, so I think that's important too. And once they're there, unless
Then
there's
they're there,
something that goes wrong, they are considered part of that school until they age out of it.
And then my only question was, is the numbers that are seen reflective here, I know that open enrollment forms for this coming school year have already been accepted. Has anyone been granted access to that yet, or is that?
I think they're formulating schedules and looking at that, but again, with your blessing, once we do the numbers, We like to get numbers ahead of time just so that they can start planning. By school board policy, I believe that we have to accept open enrollment applications all the way through April 15th, I believe. Might be May 15th, but so we're still continuing to take those, analyzing them. And again, with your blessing, the
Okay.
293, we can put the stamp on it and make them official.
Okay, all right, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay. We'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, new business, the budget update. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Reese. This is a semi-regular occurrence where Mrs. Huey provides us a summary of progress of the budget in emerging trends and also in comparison and contrast to prior year. She has a few notes to make about this month's review, and again, we try and do this as regularly as is prudent. Lizette?
Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. For the most part, all of our expenditures align with prior year. The blue represents this fiscal year, and then the orange represents last fiscal year. I think you'll see here that the anomaly is that last year, it seems like this year we spent higher in our support staff cost, and that includes salaries and benefits. And it's mainly because last year our bus drivers were paid out of ESSER 2 funds. And so this year, because they were one-time funds, we had to shift those costs back to M&O, and that's why it appears to be higher in cost. It is higher, more expenditures in M&O, but equally, we were paying those out of ESSER 2. Similarly, in the maintenance, we show that there's a maintenance and operations supply expenses are higher. Again, last year we used ESSER 1 funds, and those are no longer available this year, and therefore that's why you see the increase in our M&O expenses. Lastly, you'll also see an increase to our transportation this year compared to last year, and again, that's due to the driver shortage and the increased use of charter bus companies that are needed to help transport our students, mainly after school activities. Overall, we're still managing our resources very closely, carefully, and methodically, and we're scheduled to finish the year out in the black, and we were able to recover from some of the ADM, as you can see with our report, and we don't anticipate expending any anticipated growth this current fiscal year. And with that, that's my report.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we don't need to take action on that, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you. The public online auction items, Dr. Valenzuela.
This month's list is actually pretty abbreviated. I was surprised. It was only like a handful of things, and it's mostly old, it's not a very technical term, but it's old stuff that we've replaced. You know, paper towel dispensers and things that we've upgraded, systems that have been around for a long time. So I would recommend your designation of these public online auction items as required under state administrative rules so that they can be auctioned off.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
There's some library carts on there. So for us book people, those library carts look pretty cool.
I was looking at the,
That's
gotta
right.
get fit my summer bod back.
We love this list. So, yeah. That's my comments, Madam President.
I think it's interesting. We have 8 40-pound bags of pool salt, and the pool hasn't been a salt pool for about 4 years now. It was converted to a clear comfort pool. And I just think that's important. They were like, we're just in case we decide to go back to salt. Because the salt generators are still there, so.
I appreciate
Just being
them being
cautious.
frugal. Yeah, it's great.
Either that or somebody finally went to a dark corner of the warehouse and went, oh my gosh, I can't believe we still have this. Cool, all right. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. New Business Governing Board, the 2022-23 Compensation Plan. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Reese, members of the board. This, of course, is an annual process that we always strive to make as strong, as sound, and as favorable to our 850-plus employee team members. And I'm very proud, actually, of the work that we've done. You know, from the beginning of the pandemic, one of the things that was kind of a true north for us as we battled the ebbs and flows of declining enrollment and corresponding budgetary deficits is that we were going to take care of our people, protect their jobs, and that we were going to preserve our programs. And I think as we kind of shift gears into this seemingly new phase of the process, I think the same idea, and I think the next slide, if you could pump up the next slide. There we go, thank you. It's one of my favorite quotes. I first saw this decades ago. I think I was in graduate school in my master's program. The greatest investment is that which we make in people. And I think that continues to be a guiding light to the decisions that we make. I think our people are the unique factor that deliver the programs, that make the difference, that help our students pursue their dreams. So next thing I'd like to do is just go over on the next slide, just a little bit of history, recent history. You know, in the last few years, just a couple notes. One is, it seems kind of like long history, but it was only a few years ago. The governor's 20 by 2020 plan, and it, as you can see, over the course of those years, I'm proud to say that, and the governor was talking about teacher raises, and we honored that commitment, even though the money that was received from the state didn't easily lend itself to doing what on the surface was said, is that 1 year, if you're a teacher, you get a 10% raise. Next year, you get a 5% raise, and from that, and then the next year, you get a 5% raise based on that. For example, a lot of districts that I'm aware of referenced it on year one was the baseline, and it was 10%, and then the next year, it was 5% based on the original baseline, and same with the third year. We made the commitment, and we sharpened our pencils, and we scratched for every nickel and dime we could scratch together. And I'm really proud to say that those 3 years, we honored that commitment. For our teachers got a 10% raise, and the next year they got a 5% raise from what they were making that prior year, and then the next year, 5% more. Of course, as you can see, for some of the other employee team members, it varied a little bit, but I think that was a pretty robust 3 years in terms of our ability to provide raises, and we're grateful for that. Another thing is, and I think I have a little different version of the slides, but a couple things on the history is, one, that there was this past December, using the federal emergency relief funds, the one-time stimulus funds. They were known by multiple acronyms. You heard Lizette refer to one of them as ESSER, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Program. But we were able to provide a one-time $1,000 stipend retention for certified staff. Of course, as we know, the labor laws and the wage per hours and the Fair Labor Standards Act don't allow the same kind of actions, but we were able to provide a permanent 50 cents per hour raise at that point for our dedicated support staff team members. Can we go ahead and do the next slide, please? Okay, good. So here's the current conditions, and maybe kind of our presumptions and assumptions going forward. One is we are budgeting for 2% growth. You know, thankfully, our big gamble with how we use these federal funds, we're gambling that our students would come back, that our programs, our people, and the services that we provide would attract people who left for a variety of reasons, and we all know our individual personal journeys over the last 2 years, that they would come back. And that trust was validated. We've got the majority, about 90% of those students back. We're not up to pre-pandemic levels. So in terms of budgeting for next year, again, it's still a somewhat volatile, uncertain time. So I think it's fair and prudent to project growth, but it's also prudent to be cautious in that growth so that we can manage expectations and manage the bottom line, right, Lizette? That's what I said. We're back, but we're not quite back to pre-pandemic. The money that we have is, in terms of new money coming from the state, it's pretty limited. It's basically the inflation factor, and I put in parentheses 2%. If you've gone out and put gas in your car and you've bought, produce and you bought meat in the store, you know that the consumer price index is higher than 2%.
Yeah.
However, that's what we receive from the state. We have the 2% growth that we cited in there, and the base level of support for that gives us about $1.2 million. Kind of keep that in your mind as we're going forward. And other than that, we have what we've always tried to do, which is to be very prudent, very careful stewards of the public's dollar, and always protect the interests of the district. All right, next slide, please. So what is the proposal? So the proposal is a $2,600 flat raise on the base. Now, keep in mind, in the majority of the years that I've been here, I know in 7 of the last 9 years, we have given percentage raises. And those, that's important because they have relative value or maximum or more value to different individuals at different points in times in their careers, et cetera. For this year, and I'll explain a little bit, we are proposing a $2,600 flat raise. It's on the base. That's also an important term. Keep that in mind. What this amounts to, because it is flat, you have to talk about percent as like an average. So for the average teacher in our district, this amount equates to 5% increase, and the price tag for the district is $1.2 million. So you see that we're already above the new money that we got. Now classified. Again, classified staff members are governed by a different set of federal wage per hour guidelines, labor guidelines, et cetera. And they're a valuable member of our mission, and we want to treat them as generously and as supportive as we can. We're recommending a 71 cents per hour increase. Remember, they did get an hourly increase of 50 cents in December. Again, this is a flat amount, whether you are the most junior person who works in one of the entry-level, base-level job categories, or in the most high-level, highly technical skill that we have. It's 71 cents for all support staff, and that equates on average, for the average support staff team member wage, about 5% increase also. The cost for that is a little over $500,000, as you see there, so we're up to 1.9. So what else is part of the proposal? Health insurance. And I always look at Dr. Sparks when I talk about health insurance, because he is, some of you know, is a healthcare provider. And I know that he understands as much as any of us that, because he lives in this world, that the healthcare system is a very complex, multifaceted entity, and becoming more so. It's costly, it's complex, and it's costing more. So we're fortunate to have to be members of the Arizona School Board Association Insurance Trust. The uniqueness about the trust is that unlike a private insurance company, they obviously have employees, they've got bills to pay, but they don't have a corporate board that is looking for a profit. We incurred an increase, just the reality of things that you could probably imagine, just increased cost, increased health, all of the things that are driving higher healthcare costs in our country. 7% increase, which equates to about $232,000 for the district. Just as a caveat, just in case inquiring minds want to know, it's come up before. I did talk with some of my colleagues around Pima County, just, hey, how's it looking for you? How are you doing? The majority of the districts in Pima County are part of the statewide trust that we are a part of, and we were one of the first in Pima County, I might add. Most of them are in the trust now. There are a couple that are still funding through private insurance companies. The ones that I talked to, they're looking at double-digit increases. As a matter of fact, one of them that I know, their district is looking at coming to ASBATE. But that being said, I mean, at the forefront of our mind when we're making these decisions as a district is the fact that we really want to do the best we can for our employee team members, always. But with an extra level of just gratitude and genuine care and support and appreciation for our people after these last couple of years is we were going to do everything we could to not pass anything along to our employees. Sometimes you can't help it. We've had those years, and this year I'm pleased to say that we were able to make that happen because again, if you get a raise, I mean a 5% average raise is a pretty good raise. But then if you have to dig into that out of your pocket to pay your premium for your health insurance every 2 weeks, it cuts into that. So we're going to offset that, and what we're going to do is we're going to increase every employee's, again, the district pays the overwhelming majority, about, I want to say 85% of the employee's cost of insurance, and we're going to increase that from $4,786 to $5,350, so $564 more. And what that does for our employees is it means that their out-of-pocket costs for their coverage. Now, if they want to, of course, add their spouses and their children and things like that, that's different. But this increase is enough to offset the increase to the district in their cost for their employee coverage. So whether they have the employee-only gold, we have a few plans, silver, I don't know if we have the bronze, but you get the idea. Whatever plan you have, your out-of-pocket costs every paycheck will go down. Now, in some cases, I'm telling you it's nominal. It might be a few bucks, but I can tell you for sure it's not going up. So that's affirming to us in our objectives. And a few notes, I think these are hopefully points that you'll find helpful. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's my notes. Notes are mostly for me, so I remember them. Percent versus flat, it's a math equation. Scott's a math teacher, so we've had these conversations. If you do percent, a percent of a bigger number is a bigger number. So if you're making more money, it amounts to more money coming into your pocket. And I think that's justifiable sometimes. I think basically if you look at our senior faculty and staff who have been with us for a long time, rewarding longevity, those are worthy goals. I mean, we have people that have gotten 20, 30, every year we do these 20, 30, sometimes 40-year pins. And so to recognize that, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, 7 of the last 9 years, we've done 1%. But at the same time, we have to balance. That's a word I've used a lot lately, is kind of walking the midline, being balanced. And by doing a flat amount, what we do is we support the newer teachers. We help to validate their professional abilities, what they're doing, and we help to keep them, hopefully, in the profession. And speaking of the profession and the future of the profession, it also helps to bring up the entry-level salary that we're able to offer new people fresh out of college coming to join the organization. Because of course, if you do 1%, then and you can't raise that entry-level number more than the raise you just gave the most junior person who's already working in your district and has at least a year in. But if you give a flat amount, obviously by percent, you're elevating that baseline so that you can raise your entry-level salary. And on a related note, I know one of the things we've talked about from a competitiveness standpoint of our outreach and recruitment efforts is it gives us a little breathing room to give more years of credit to people that are coming from the outside, that you want to validate as much of their experience as they can, but you don't want it to overstep somebody who's been comparable years in our district and invested in our community. And so as Scott mentioned, this allows us to slowly start to move in that direction. And just as a tidbit of information, because I wanted to know, I asked Scott, I said, Scott, I want to know what % of our employee team members, first I said, certified, also support, what percentage of them will do at least as good or better this year for next year's contract by doing the flat. So of course, Scott being the math guy with his Excel spreadsheet, in no time at all, he had it. And it's actually higher for certified for teachers, but as a whole employee group, all employees, faculty and staff and support staff, about 2/3 of our employees are going to be better off, would be better off by a flat amount. So I'd say that. Another thing I will say, and it makes me very proud, and I know this, the stuff we get from the auditors is not everything, but it is something, and it is important. They did their analysis, so this is not ours. The Auditor General, who we have many reporting and of course compliance things to do, they put out a story way back in March. It was right before spring break. It was about the school districts and classroom spending. But the part that I zeroed in on, I kid people, sort of, I think I'm one of the last people that still gets the paper copy of the Arizona Daily Star. But I kept it. And among I will say our average teacher salary is still a little bit behind the state. And we know that the state is an even bigger demographic and has multiple other variables. We're catching up, we're approaching that. But among Pima County and 9 of the major districts, we have the highest average teacher pay, at just over $54,000. Now some are pretty close to us, but that makes me very proud. And I know that our board, through prioritization and support and goals, has supported this through our actions and through our planning efforts. So very proud of that. Wanted to say that. Long versus short term, a lot of things that have happened in the last couple of years, I've found myself evaluating a common thought process about whether you look at things as the glass half empty or the glass half full. And we choose to focus on the positive. One of the things, full transparency, that you will hear in the community from some districts is they're making pretty sizable one-time stipends for their teachers, for other employees perhaps, but I know for teachers. I know one district that anticipates providing like a $3,000 stipend. I would just ask you to keep in mind that when the distribution came about of one-time emergency relief funds, there was a formula that was largely rooted on the socioeconomic status of that community through this National School Lunch Program that basically guided the overwhelming weight of how much money you got. So there's a big disparity is an accurate word, factual word. It's just is, and we're grateful for the money we've gotten. We're kind of middle. We have about 40 or 45% free and reduced lunch participation. But there's districts that have a lot more. And so, they're able to do that. Sometimes, however, and again, you got to look at it half full, sometimes those are districts that have struggled with declining enrollment. So that's one-time money. So the long-term sustainability of those dollars is different. And so although we don't have as much, and again, we're grateful, we didn't lay off one person through the pandemic that we pink slipped because of the enrollment decline and the budgetary collapse, that drop. So we're grateful for that. But although we didn't get as much of that one-time money, and we did the $1,000 that we had responsibly to use, but I am really grateful that when you look at the long-term upside, the trends, the foreseeability, the construction that's going on in our area, I know the town just approved preliminary plans for another one. This, by all reasonable standards, is a growing community and is going to continue to be that. So what we're offering is a long-term plan that all evidence suggests is sustainable for the long haul. So I think that's important to keep in mind. I mentioned the 2 raises, the raise for the support staff. I didn't want to forget the one-time stipend that we were able to do through those one-time funds. Another thing, again, in keeping with making this as much a true raise as it can be is the Arizona State Retirement System, which we're all as state employees required to participate in, is anticipated to go down by about 0.25% from, not a ton, from 12.41% to 12.17%. It's not a lot, but it is going down. So again, that's something that when you look at cost that employees have to put in, of course, then the district has to match and put in too. That's going down. And finally, the board I know is very familiar, and for the public again, Prop 301 is a sales tax initiative that was passed by the voters of the state of Arizona. I think it was in 2000 or 2001. And it supports various initiatives. Most notably is support for education and teacher wages. There's a menu and there's 3 buckets, and I'm proud to say that this board and the boards that I've been honored to serve in the course of my superintendency have always been very focused, like a laser, that we will provide as much as we are able to provide of Prop 301 to support teacher salaries. And I want to say it's about $6,000 or $6,000 or $6,500 or so for teachers. And the good news is that, well, I guess it's bad news, good news, but I mean, it does ebb and flow because it is sales tax dependent. And according to the briefing that I've received from Mrs. Huey, it is going down slightly, like from $733 per student to about $700-ish. But the good news is, and I would go back, honor the past, going back to the era of Charlotte Gates when she sat in this chair, and now continuing with Mrs. Huey, they've always been very methodical about balancing those books so that we have, like, I think about it as like the shock absorbers that you have on your car to absorb the potholes. We have these shock absorbers to absorb the ebbs and flows so that we've been able to maintain and absorb those shocks and keep, as much as we can, a steady investment in Prop 301. So the good news is, Prop 301, even though the sales tax data suggests otherwise, it's not going down. It's staying the same. So in essence, it's a true raise. And again, I have a summary on the next page. I won't belabor it too much. It's a $2,600 base salary increase, 71-cent hourly wage increase for support staff, and an increase of $564 to $5,380 for health care premiums. The cost with the health care piece is now 2.2. So if you were thinking back to the beginning slide, we're $1 million over. So now the question is, how do we propose to pay for it? Well, there it is. We're only getting about $1.2 million of new money. We are responsibly going to our savings account, which we've done before, responsibly, and not excessively. We've been very thoughtful about saving as much as we can. We always strive to have a carry forward to protect the interests of the district. So we are proposing to take $1 million out of that carry forward, which then balances the books. It's a fraction, it's not a majority fraction. We still are left with a significant carry forward. You do note that the expectation is that we'll have about $3 million carry forward. If you're wondering what happened to the other $800,000, we're monitoring and adjusting to the cost that society is dealing with. You know, we have to budget for increased costs in supplies, in fuel, the inflation issue. We also did, although we're not back to full pandemic level, and I know that Mr. Downs and Mr. Bonner, Ms. Huey said that when they met individually with every principal, they probably had it like on record, on the old cassette recorder. But there were some situations, and I sat in as we flushed this information out. There were some programs by growth, by individual circumstances in individual schools for particular situations where we had to add about $400,000 of new positions. And even with all of that, we still carry about $3 million going forward, which is less than the 9 or 10% that we like, but it's still a pretty robust carry forward, especially with the projections that we have right now. And frankly, it's enough to cover our obligations and emergencies if something radically unforeseen were to occur next year. So, in a nutshell, I believe I'm grateful for our team. We've had conversations also and shared with our teacher advisory group, our support staff advisory group, and I think the overall consensus is that although it's not perfect, I wish we could do more. I think it's reasonable, it's responsible, it's prudent, it's sustainable, it's balanced, I think it's thoughtful, and again, it reflects what I started with at the first slide. It's an investment in our greatest resource, which is our people. So with that, at this time, I would recommend approval of the 2022-23 compensation package as presented, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I appreciate all the information and the methodical evaluation of this. It's very helpful, and I think for clarity for the public too, to understand, the choices and the decisions that the district are making, and our, their investment in the community. This is truly their investment, right? So
Yes, sir.
appreciate that.
Madam President?
Yes.
The carry forward, I think we've done this in the past, and I think every time we've ever done that, we've recovered it within that year. And I think there's a reasonable expectation, since these numbers are based on zero growth. That's a pretty, at least a safe move. And $3 million is not a lot compared to the overall budget, but at the same time, I was trying to think in my head what's the largest single item expense that we could have in our district like this. What's the most expensive single item? And the only thing I could think of is a chiller, like an air conditioning chiller, about like 1.9 million, 1.4 million, and we just replaced them all. So they're all brand new and probably under warranty. So I mean that sounds like a lot, but that's what they cost to buy a chiller for a school. Am I right on that? It's in the mid 1.5 to 2 million range.
Yeah, with everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, because you can't just replace the pump;
Right.
you have to replace all the pieces. But and so I think from a functional perspective, most of the other stuff we have is covered by insurance. If one of our buildings were to be struck or hurt, or a light tower falls down, I mean, like kind of those things. But so I think I'm comfortable with that. I think I'm grateful.
Yes, sir. Now, and I think Dr. Sparks, just as a point of clarification, and I always defer on the details of this to my colleague, the colleague to my right, but our budget is based on a 2% growth. So it does
Oh, it
include
is on
2%.
2%.
But it's 2% based on the prior year. I think it's the real indicators would suggest that it might be a little more than that. So it's a little conservative, but not a lot. So it's a balance. But the other thing is, to your
2%
point,
growth in inflation from the state or in student growth?
student enrollment.
And both, because we're gonna, the monies that we receive from the state is based on a 2% inflation, and then with 2% growth. That's
Then
the
I
1.2
misunderstood that.
together. That's what that
That's what
titles.
that is the
yeah.
1.2 together. But again, that's why, although we have the authorization and the board has the capacity, we could do $3 more million if we want. But we have enough to cover not just that chiller. And I remember when the one broke down. So you're right. It's probably one of the more expensive.
Because they're not covered because it's wear and tear. They
No,
get
it's
old.
considered a wear and tear item, right? But the other thing is, to your point, is let's say that we guess wrong, and let's say that the numbers were to dwindle. We have that buffer to offset if we guess wrong, as opposed to if we go to the close to the edge of what we can authorize. Then if we don't reach that, then we're looking at more drastic measures like cutting people in programs. So we would think it's a good balance line.
And I apologize, I misread that. But even that still makes me reasonably comfortable.
Yes, sir.
Only because we do know some of the people who move in will go to whatever the other options are, right? There's various these days, but at least I feel comfortable with that. And I think, we discuss inflation, I think supporting us I want to support everybody, and we are at a flat rate, it does also give a slight lift to that lower entry-level wage. And
Yes, sir.
if I understand it, then that means over a year period, the support staff will have $1.21 an hour total.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. That's in a less than a 12-month period, really,
Correct.
Yeah, from January.
since January.
Mhm.
And I think as we just, the one thing I would ask is that we make sure we're very clear that the cost of insurance did go up, but we did consume that into the budget rather, because I know in the past there's been we've done that for a few years in a row, and people, I think we just need to make sure people realize that that's what's happening. That the cost did actually go up, but we're consuming that inside the budget.
Yes,
Just
sir.
make sure that's clear.
Yes, sir.
Because that way there's no confusion if there is a need ever to, and as the current growth of healthcare goes, there might well be. But that there's an understanding of what took place.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Is there any more discussion? For myself, again, I would just like to add that, again, thank you for the clarity on this. It makes it very easy to understand, so I appreciate that. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving on, the 2022 Youth Summer Arts Town of Sahuarita Project Agreement. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Reese. This particular item brings me a great deal of joy, and I've always appreciated this program, but that saying, you don't know what you got till it's gone. We haven't had it it's one of those things that we haven't had during the course of the last couple of years with the pandemic, and it's back. This is a wonderful program that I think exemplifies the spirit of community that kind of represents Sahuarita. I don't take credit for this. This has been around a long time. If you drive around our beautiful town and you see the beautiful mosaic tile, I mean, we have some of the most beautiful garbage cans, nicely decorated, benches around town, and if you walk, as I'm sure we all have, underneath the underpass, the beautiful mosaic art of some of the history of Sahuarita and some of the native plants and animals, all done by our Sahuarita High School art students. This is a partnership that is led by the town of Sahuarita. I think John's here, John Garcia. I think he's been there just about from the inception of the beginning. And so this program's back, and just in a nutshell, for refreshing our memories, this is a program where the town secures funding. I believe it's from the Pima Association of Governments or the RTA, somewhere in the county, and it provides for the employment of youth, our high school art students, the Summer Public Youth Art Program, and basically the town procures and secures and organizes the program, works with our art faculty and administration to identify a project. They oversee it. They work together. The students and their teacher work to create, design, construct, fire in the kiln, paint, glaze, and actually put up the entire project. And so the project is back. You have the intergovernmental agreement with the town of Sahuarita in your packet, and I'm proud to recommend your approval of the IGA with the town of Sahuarita for this year's Summer Public Youth Art Program.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
I would just like to publicly thank Mr. Garcia for his participation in this. We all know that, those programs are out there, but without our community members that help us link and facilitate, and John has just been instrumental in that, and we have been on the receiving end of that generosity and that leadership, and I just want to thank him very much for being here and for his participation in that with our kids.
I just want to second that. I always know when this comes up, Mr. Garcia will be in the audience. I think you've been here every year I've been on the board when it's been approved, so I appreciate that. And I think this program is I mean, it did all of the murals under the walkway. It did most of the trash cans, most of the benches. It did the original, the town sign, if I believe, right? And it's done a lot of, kind of enhancement and beautification. But I think also if you watch that process, watch these students design and build and, create these, ceramics and fire them and, clean all of that, as well as install them. So I think it's a really good program, and I think the kind of the two things that I see Mr. Garcia at most of is this project, and then also all the roadway cleaning projects. I mean, I do that a lot, and he always brings the vests and the what do you call those? The gripper, like the picker-upper things. That's an official term, I'm sure. I do know that I've talked to students in the past years, and they enjoy their involvement with the town and appreciate that leadership. So I think it's great, and I'm excited to hear that it's back.
I like all the traffic signal cabinets that aren't gray, that have something else on them. It's nice. It really is a welcome thing, and I like going around and seeing the new ones every year too. It's a fun little project to go around and remember. Oh yeah, that one's there, and you're greeted by a hummingbird or a Gila monster or whatever instead of a gray cabinet, on the side of the road. So looks good.
Well, and I just want to say that, Mr. Garcia, I'm very much looking forward to the report that you traditionally do at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
One of my very first board meetings was during that report back in 2019, and it was so cool to see
Kids were excited.
the results of this culminating project of their, this, the intergovernmental agreement project. And so I'm looking forward to that, hopefully in August or September. So thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. The next agenda item is the 2022-23 Certified Determination Chart. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs.
Right.
Reese. This is a direct follow-up to the just approved compensation plan. And I'm going to excuse myself for a moment and turn over the mic to my colleague, Mr. Downs, who can tell you all about it. I'll be right back.
Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. Just as excited as I get about our staff, getting more for the hard work they do, is really being able to create a tool that increases our ability to recruit new people to our field or to the district. And the chart that you see before you, a couple of notable things. And again, when I look at this, it's all mathematics and formulas and figuring out how much you're going to raise it. So as you guys just approved, $2,600 per employee, I could theoretically approve every step by $2,500 and make that as much of an increase as we can. And the reason I would say just under, again, was to make sure that the people who are here we're supporting and make more than the people who we are now recruiting. Doing that would have put our base salary well over $40,000, and I got very excited about that because I always thought that was a great pinnacle to get our starting base salary for a teacher at least at $40,000. The reason it's not at $40,000 is it's only $600 away. I couldn't push it that much because in our desire to recruit not only new teachers, but also teachers from other districts and giving years of experience, our previous chart, we gave 6 years of experience. This one is saying we will give up to 7 years of experience. So what I had to do carefully is to make sure that any teacher who we hired this year with 6 years of experience and somebody comes in next year with 7 years of experience, meaning both of those teachers have 7 years of experience, that I wasn't paying somebody from the outside more than I was paying our teacher that got hired this 6 years with their $2,600. So I wasn't able to raise each category, our cell number, by $2,600. In fact, I was able to raise it by $1,900. And so that got a little bit of a differential because everyone looks at that. And again, if we ignore the fact of our current staff and raise this so preposterously amount that all of our staff is making less money, then you're upsetting the apple cart. And it really does you no good to create a very powerful tool for recruitment because you're hurting your own staff. So I was very conscious, and the numbers that we used But it is nice to say that if you look at the beginning salary of $39,000 with their 301 money, and again, it's not going down at all, that a new teacher to our district next year with no extra education, they just have a bachelor's degree and no years of experience, with 301 money, they'll be making just over $46,000, which is nice to be able to say, and I wish it was more. So again, the base is 39.4 with the 301, it puts them at 46. This does allow for 7 years of more years of experience, and I couldn't do more than that. We couldn't keep chewing off 8 because then again I start upsetting the apple cart. So hopefully next year, if we're able to do something, I can start including 8 districts. When I studied it, they went anywhere from 5 years to 6 years to 8 years. A couple of them were at 10, and a lot of them were at 10, and a lot of districts came back when money was tight, and so all of us kind of came back to 6, and I think all the districts have been gradually coming back again, which is what our plan is here. So very excited about this. We now recognize up to 7 years of experience without upsetting our apple cart. A new teacher with 301 money would make $46,000, and I think that's all the math behind it. And I answer any questions that you have about the salary determination chart.
And first, I'd recommend your approval of the 2022-23 Certified Initial Determination Chart.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Madam President.
Yes.
So what right now? So the base salary is 39,000. So that what 39,400. Let's call that 39,500. What was last year's 301 total for a teacher? Or what is it going to? What are you expecting it to be?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
How the additional pay on top of that, with including the Proposition 301 money?
Well, because the proposition money stayed the same, that a new teacher this year versus last year, they'll be making $1,900 more than what they would have made last year.
I understand, but what is that amount? What is the 301 money per teacher amount? Do you know that?
Oh, yeah, $6,550 for a brand-new first-year teacher.
For a brand new first-year teacher?
Yep.
Okay, I was just making sure, because the number up there is incorrect. I just wanted to make sure I didn't read that. It says 42,000, and 39,500 plus 6,000 is more like 46,000, so.
A little.
Right under the certified salary determination chart.
I'm not upset. I'm trying not to point out I'm not trying to point out an error.
Where's the
It's
42,000?
the white, where it says with 301 money, base teacher pay would be approximately.
Oh.
It's right under the heading.
I'll show you.
Is that because of the base? We embed one of them in the
Oh,
base.
I see.
Okay, and I was just making sure I
No,
heard
thank
everything
you.
right, because I wasn't sure if
Yeah.
I was calculating it wrong, or maybe.
No, and that's an old number, and really the only people that ever see this chart is HR, so
Yeah.
we don't produce this.
Yeah.
So I can correct that. So actually, one person sees this most of the time.
Yeah, and then I'm grateful for the effort to expand the teacher experience value and do that in such a way that that those that are here and meet that criteria are getting more than you would get coming in with 7 years. I mean, not a huge amount, but it's more, right? So we're giving that compensation. And I want to make sure it's yellow, any graduate coursework earned after last degree awarded. Do we give those points when someone comes in based on their current credit load at that time? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Because sometimes we have people come in with 2 bachelor's degrees and they want to make a lot more money. And so what we always do is we always look at the highest degree attained plus anything after that, and that's
Yeah.
what they get credit for at time of
Yeah,
hire.
because if you earn 2 bachelors at the same time,
Right.
that's not
Right.
I understand.
Yeah.
You did that in the same 4-year period. We're talking about, we're giving recognition for continuing education.
Correct.
And I'm not discrediting those that got 2, I get that, right? This is an effort to value that continuing education component,
Yep.
correct? Okay.
And I would say one more, you'll see another determination chart coming soon with the exact same numbers, but just for your approval. Josh Fields has worked very hard on looking at compensation and how we bring in JTED teachers. And right now, a JTED teacher comes in with no teaching experience, but yet they've been an auto teacher for 15 years. And so it's very hard to equate, 6 years of teaching, 7 years of teaching, or 7 years of auto. So he's created a chart by looking at other school districts. I've looked at it, I've blessed it, we've kind of hammered it out a little bit. So once we finalize that, we'll be bringing that back to the board. Again, the same numbers, the same cells, kind of just different requirements, and really gives them a little bit more credit for some of the things that they've done and the things that they brought to the table, just like a regular ed teacher.
And it'll provide a rubric to give credit for that experience that is valuable.
Absolutely. And also credit that sometimes they may not have gone and gotten associates or a bachelor's degree, but they've taken 1,600 hours of professional development in auto and auto training and,
Yeah.
and hours of certification. So that kind of balances out as well with the educational component of a regular ed teacher. So he's done a fabulous job in looking at other school districts and composing something that I thought that was appropriate. So once Dr. Valenzuela takes a look at it and blesses it, then I would like to bring it back to Dr. Valenzuela for his recommendation to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump on that just really quick because we just entered my wheelhouse and I'm confused. So, are most of our CTE teachers then coming out of industry and they're alternatively certified in order to teach in our schools? They're not coming out of a teacher prep program?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, there are
Got
different
it.
certifications that you can have through the Arizona Department of Education where you don't have to have a true bachelor's in education to have become a CTE teacher.
Or an ag like mine is. So yeah, no, it's
You're
it's
exactly
fine.
right.
Yeah, no, I was like, wait a minute. And so I just wanted to make sure that it was clear in my
Yeah,
head.
that's correct.
So, okay.
Madam President?
Yes.
I just have a question about that really quick. So of all of our CTE instructors, you're saying the majority are coming out of industry directly?
I would probably say the majority, but I couldn't give you a percentage-wise, but a lot of them are
Okay, 'cause
alternatively certified.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm interested in that number, only in that information, because I think that functionally shows kind of a shift, even if it's close to that. Because I think a lot of kind of the traditional things we think of, film and TV and photography and art and, some of these things that could now, we think of art as kind of a traditional track through an educational system, but you could see a graphics design person, or someone who had a lot of experience in some field coming in from that.
Yeah.
I think that's a paradigm shift in how we look at this kind of career and technical education, which I think functionally we've been defunct on as a nation, quite frankly, for many decades now. I mean, I'm glad and this district has a really robust CTE program, very robust, comparatively to many of our counterparts. And I'm grateful for that because, as a nation, we kind of grew up and then all of a sudden just kind of stopped putting a lot of focus on this career and technical education function. And I think that's hurt us in some ways. I think if you talk about a lot of the industries, they'll tell you that it has, because you have less people going into, air conditioning and less people going into plumbing. I mean, the average plumber in Tucson makes a whole lot more than the average graduate from college. So I'm grateful for that. Sorry, that was kind of off topic, but semi on topic.
Yeah, no, and I apologize for
Thank
the
you.
segue. I needed to clarify. So
Thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
We like it.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The next agenda item is the 2022-23 support staff wage schedule. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Reese, members of the board and public. This is again a corresponding follow-up item to the compensation plan. And again, I would turn the mic over to my colleague, Mr. Downs.
Yep. Thank you very much, Dr. Valenzuela. And again, very simplistically, raising all the different categories by a certain number, but not what we gave the raise. So we gave, you guys just graciously gave 71 cents to every certified or classified employee. And again, how much do we raise the base? Again, I have to look at it mathematically and predict the future a little bit and what's going to happen with minimum wage. Right now, minimum wage is $12.80. So we want to raise it to hopefully above $20.80 to where in January when it increases, are we going to be able to raise it enough to where we don't have to touch anybody? And so by not raising it enough, though, to where those people who are still here are still getting more money than what the new employees coming in at. So kind of that sweet point I determined at 60 cents. That leaves us 4.6% over the current minimum wage for the A position. So the chart that you see before you is actually a 60-cent increase on every position from the top to the bottom. Again, starting to look at those different categories differently and doing a different number would upset the apple cart of valuing one category more than the other. So it was a flat 60 cents to every chart. Again, that leaves our bottom A category at 4.6% above our current minimum wage. So if minimum wage goes up more than that, then we'll have to do some adjustments in January. I've looked at any statistic that I can, which means there wasn't any. I was trying to talk to other HR directors to figure out what the prediction was for minimum wage going up. I've spoken with other HR directors. Nobody really has any information on what the prediction might be. And so, again, I tried to raise it as much as I possibly could, so it'll be 4.6% over the base. Current employees will be about 0.5%. If they're at the bottom of their category, they'll still be 0.5% above anybody new coming in. So again, it's kind of a mathematical game to try to figure out what might be the prediction, and that was the best that I could come up with mathematically. So,
And I'd just like to recognize Scott. You know, this has been this thing that they call compression, you know, with the minimum wage and stuff. And Scott's always looked, you know, sometimes, I'll be honest, I've talked to colleagues around the state where when they have a minimum wage issue and it has a certain amount of cost, they do what they have to do to comply with the minimum wage law. But we know that it's like an accordion, that this has an effect. And Scott's always had the orientation that we not only need to fix the short-term issue, but we need to be as thoughtful as we can about the impact and just treating all of our support staff team members favorably as much as we can afford when we make those decisions. So thank you. And with that, I would recommend your approval of the 2022-23 support staff wage schedule.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you both, especially to you, Mr. Downs, for all of the finagling that goes into that. And then, obviously, if it's numbers, Lizette probably had her hand in it as well. So thank you both.
It's a team effort always.
A team effort. So, all right, the next agenda item is the consent agenda. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Reese, you have in your packet the consent agenda, which again are routine consent matters that may be considered in one motion, and I do recommend approval of the entire consent agenda at this time.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this one? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Our next agenda item. Okay, possible future agenda considerations. Does anyone have anything that they would like considered on a future agenda?
I've been feeling a little nostalgic this evening, thinking about all the Ken Blanchard books I've read. Everything from, you know, Lead Like Jesus to Well Done to Raving Fans. I think I've read like 9 of his books. Maybe we should have a Ken Blanchard book reading or something. No, I'm just joking. I can't believe how many books I've read from that individual. It really is kind of cool. But I don't think that needs to be an agenda item. But we could all probably read a book by Ken Blanchard and be better off for it. Great books.
Cool. Get me confused, John.
All right, then we'll establish the next board meeting, April 27th, 2022, the Sahuarita District Auditorium, 350 West Sahuarita Road, Pod B. That's here in this room. And we will be open to the public. There's no executive session tonight, so the next thing we need is a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you for coming, and good evening.